This just in. Breaking news. Our top story tonight. The Joe Biden campaign has announced a change in slogan from no malarkey to
you're full of shit.
All right, thank you.
No, shush.
Doesn't quite have that same old person charm. Next up, the Yang Gang is furious at the DNC for what's a blatant ripoff of a hat. Actually, now that I get a closer look, these hats are pretty different. In unrelated news, new merchandise available at the Doug store. Get your Doug hats, Doug shirts, or maybe even a Doug mug. Actually, at the moment, we only have a Doug hat, but I expect these things to sell like hotcakes. Link in the description below. And finally tonight, Harvey Weinstein convicted and faces 23 years in prison. Although realistically, it's more like 2 to 3 years. The man looks like uncooked pizza dough. I'm sure his arteries do too. All of this and more tonight on this continuously running joke. Let's kick things off by talking about the primary results yesterday. We're of course talking about Super Tuesday 2, which is an extremely dumb name. This name is basically Super Tuesday seems to be popular, and this is another day, so let's call it Super Tuesday 2. But the amount of delegates in play on Super Tuesday 2 is only 26% of Super Tuesday, so it's actually just 1/4 of Super Tuesday, which frankly sounds like a pretty regular Tuesday. You just can't slap a 2 on something and expect it to be as good as the original if it's actually much worse. That's right, I'm talking to you, Weekend at Bernie's. In fact, I'd much rather actually spend a weekend at Bernie's.
I am with Cardi B.
But anyway, after a tumultuous Democratic primary, it does seem that Joe Biden finally has things locked up. But that's not always been the case. Sure, Joe started off as the front runner to take down the nomination, but there have been many swings. Kamala Harris jumped into the #1 spot after she went after Joe in a debate, and then she ran her campaign into the ground and ran out of money. Then Elizabeth Warren stepped up and came up huge, leading the pack, and then her campaign also slowly got driven into the ground. All of this led up to Bernie Sanders finally establishing a massive lead. He was the odds-on favorite by quite a margin to take it all down just a few weeks ago. I remember thinking to myself in late February, there's just simply no way that anyone else can win this. Biden is toast, and the other candidates had almost no chance to win as well. And then it seemed so quickly to turn around, and it really started with South Carolina. There was a debate where a lot of people thought that Biden had his strongest performance yet, and he massively carried the state, and from there it was just one state after another, things really started to turn. If we look at the states who've already voted, we can see what the picture is like. Biden leads with 838 delegates, Sanders is in second with 691, and then everyone else has dropped out other than Tulsi Gabbard, and she has 0 delegates. The problem here for Bernie Sanders is a simple one. Even though he's not behind Biden by very much, he doesn't have a lot of great states left. Even though California is gray on this map, it's already had its primary, and while he did win a plurality of the delegates, there are now going to be no additional ones from his strongholds like these West Coast states. If we look at some data on the betting odds for who's going to win the Democratic primary, we can see that Biden, according to Real Clear Politics, is coming in at approximately 87% more likely than Sanders to win the nomination. But what's especially interesting about this graph is look how much it swung. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago in mid-February, we can see Biden all the way down at a low of 9% to win the nomination. And now, of course, he's up to in the low 90s. If we look over at 538, we can see that they think it's even more likely Biden's going to win, with having Biden at 99 in 100 to win the nomination. So this thing really is, it's not 100% over, but it's very close. Now you got to ask yourself, what happened? Why did Bernie not have the success that he was hoping to have? And there's always a lot of things at play when you ask a question like that, but there is one thing that stuck out to me a little bit. Looking at some exit polling out of Missouri, we can see essentially the age demographic of who voted in the primaries. And what we can see is that turnout for young people actually dropped substantially from 2016. Young people don't go out and vote that often anyway, but 16% down to 12% is a significant decrease in the total amount of people voting. And that's still such a paltry number of people voting at all that even though Bernie is very popular with that demographic, if they don't go out and vote, it doesn't matter. Why did that happen? I have to imagine that it looks something like this.
We are winning over the young people in this country.
I can't vote online? Yeah, fuck it.
But we can't have a talk about Joe Biden becoming the presumptive nominee without having a talk about some of these classic Joe Biden moments. And I'm sure we've all seen a few of them by now. But today there was yet another Biden moment that broke that people have been talking about. And it's of course this one with this union worker.
I'd like you to explain how you plan to not only keep us working,
about how you intend on getting the union vote when there is a large portion of the union workers that are gun enthusiasts, and you are actively trying to diminish our Second Amendment right and take away our guns.
You're full of shit.
All right, thank you.
Now,
Guys.
shush. Shush.
I love this guy's reaction because that's the reaction that everyone else is having at home as well.
I support the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, just like right now, if you yell fire, that's not free speech. And from the very beginning, I have a shotgun, I have a 20 gauge, a 12 gauge, my son's hunt.
Oh God, this is embarrassing. No, Joe, your son's not Hunt. He's Hunter.
Take your AR-14s and what?
Okay, this is not okay.
Hold on.
All right.
Hey, let's
You
be
went
Don't
up
tell
and
me
did
to
the
leave
same
out.
thing
I want
you
to go outside.
There's a lot of guys.
You're
A lot of guys
working for
wanted.
me, man.
I'm not working.
Hey,
Hold on.
Thank you so much.
Give me a
Thank
break,
you so
man.
much.
Don't be such a
You're
worry
pushing
bag.
up.
Couple things to take away from this clip. First off, there's no doubt about it, Joe Biden has moments where he certainly seems to lose his way. He's trying to make this conversation about comparing the Second Amendment to the First Amendment and referencing how you have freedom of speech. It doesn't mean you can use that speech in certain ways that hurt other people. That's what he was trying to say, but he got a little bit lost along the way. It is hard when you see someone fumble around like that trying to talk. But it's also important to remember that when people are going to do a lot of live video stream type content or they're interviewing people out in the wild, you're going to have moments where you mess up. For Joe Biden, that happens a lot more than for other people. That's something that we have to be aware of. But there have been many people along the way that have been nominated and even elected president who were not exactly the best speakers.
An economy based on wind. I never understood wind. I know windmills very much. I've studied it better than anybody. I know it's very expensive. You know what uranium is, right? It's a thing called nuclear weapons and other things. Like lots of things are done with uranium, including some bad things. Nobody talks about that.
The more important aspect of this is I believe Joe is correct in what he's trying to say, which is he is not trying to take everyone's guns away. He's just for fairly strict controls on them. If you look at his voting record, he has an F from the NRA, and on more than one occasion, he's made some strong stances against guns. But at no point, at least as far as I can find, has he come out and said, I don't think anyone should be able to have a gun. And if you guys can find something that shows otherwise, please let me know in the comments below. I don't want people to think that I'm purposefully editing out other parts of Joe in this debacle. He also called them AR-14s. He also yelled at the guy more. It was a fairly heated exchange, but I just don't have much more on the topic I want to dive into. One last note in this topic, which I find to be pretty important but got brushed aside, is his campaign manager or whoever it is on the next to him tries to move on and he shushes them to go into this spiel. Well, maybe next time you might want to listen to your campaign manager because that's kind of their job, to manage the campaign. On a different note, I came across this tweet from Doug Kim talking about the domain name BernieSander.com. And no, that's not me mispronouncing Bernie Sanders. That was the domain that was bought by someone to redirect to Joe Biden's campaign. Even though it's not the nicest thing to do, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with buying domain names that are similar but a bit different from popular ones to get traffic that might fall off. And that's why when you do make a business or you do build a business, you should buy similar domain names or buy names that are familiar to the ones that might become popular. It's basically a long-term play to protect yourself, and smart people do that preemptively. The problem with this one in particular was that if you were on mobile, it just immediately went to a donate page. So if you put in BernieSander.com and you were on your phone and you might donate $5, it would have gone to Joe Biden. The top thing about stories like this is because we don't know who exactly owns the domain or what their goals were, we can't say for sure it was Joe Biden. But it's definitely good this got pointed out, and now the domain doesn't link to anything, so it's safe for everybody. And finally tonight, Harvey Weinstein has been convicted of sexual abuse. The defense said anything over 5 years would kill the man. The judge took that into consideration and gave him 23. 1 year for each chin. No, but seriously, Harvey Weinstein's lawyers are saying that this sentence is severe, especially after how little time Epstein spent in prison. I think that what makes this story so jarring is just how long it went on for and just how many women were affected. It actually reminds me a little bit of the Bill Cosby story, where it took years, decades for women to see justice happen for the crimes against them, and the number of women is much more than you would have imagined. So next time that we see someone come forward with their story about something that happened, let's not decide based on the woman or the person that they're accusing if they're right or wrong. Let's hear what they have to say, let the courts do their job, and try not to make everything political. Thanks for joining me here today, guys. We're going to be posting Monday to Friday, so if you like the videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow.